Hello. Welcome to the last session at BriForum. Don't ask me how I always get stuck doing the last session at BriForum. But I assumed this place would be empty because I thought everybody would be racing for the airport trying to get out of here. I mean, if anybody lives on the East Coast, you might be staying here another night. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, they got now they're up to 2.5 hour delay at O'Hare for JFK and Newark. So, yeah, I didn't think anybody'd be here. But hey, this is cool. As Alyssa said, I'm Mike Nelson. I'm going to be doing the whole VDI thing, fast, easy, and fun. I asked them if I could take the word fun off, but they wouldn't let me. So it's kind of fun. That's me, that's my Twitter, and that's my personal blog. So every year at BriForum, when I do a session about VDI, I always have to show this slide. This is like the de facto slide for VDI right there. It's a big train wreck, and that's what it's been since 2008 when they first started to look at this stuff. And you got the biggest players. You got Citrix, you got VMware, and you got Microsoft all in there. And one of the biggest questions, I did a session last year, and it was around how do you manage all this in one data center? How do you have multiple hypervisors in the data center and stuff like that? But whenever I talk about VDI, I always try and show this slide right away. And the biggest thing is the addition of the Microsoft one is really, that one kind of got wrecked up that way. VMware, of course, is right in the middle where everybody wanted to nail it, and then you got Microsoft coming off the side again, and then Citrix. So, anyways, I just like to show that. So we're going to talk about Windows Server 8. Right? Come on. Anybody at DevCon? Everybody at? No? Okay. This is actually a screen print taken off the Microsoft presentation. That's what it was. Windows Server 8. I don't think so. So that was what was shown. And then they actually handed these out. Windows Server 8 beta USB keys. 16 gig beta keys. And said, hey, this is the new feature, the future of our servers. Right here is Windows Server 8. And it's going to match our operating system. We're going to have the Metro style. We're going to have the charms. We're going to have all this stuff. And it's all going to look the same, and we're going to go with the same name. No. Now it's Windows Server 2012. That is official as of, I don't know what, Tech Ed maybe or something like that. They're officially calling it this now. And it's really a marketing thing if you think about it. But so one of the things that we want to start out talking about was how does this whole thing start with VDI or virtualization in general? What did we start out with? What was the basis of remote application delivery? Terminal services, right? What's that, Steve? Yeah. Terminal services. Terminal service was the basis of everything. It's been around for years. Been around forever, really. From there, terminal services kind of takes a little background here, goes in the background, and then they came out with VDI. 2008 VDI. That's when everybody wanted to rock on VDI. That was the year. Well, everybody hooked onto that. Citrix hooked onto it. VMware hooked onto it. Even Red Hat hooked onto it. Novell hooked onto it. Everybody did, except Microsoft. Microsoft came back and said, VDI is a bad word. Blah. We don't want anything to do with it. Nothing. So they came out with something called MedV. Yeah, I hear those chuckles. They came out with something called AppV. AppV is also application virtualization. Still around. If you saw Tim Mennigan's presentation on AppV, new 5.0, really good. Kind of surprised a little bit that AppB is still around, but it still is, and it's still kicking. Everybody knows what MedV is, right? Microsoft Enterprise Desktop Virtualized. That was their first attempt at VDI. And then we bring in something called RDS. When did RDS come about? Anybody know? When they actually started calling it RDS? 2008, SP2. Yeah, believe it or not, they were real touchy about that. They didn't release that until SP2. But yeah, they took RDS, and what they basically did is once RDS came out, they said WTS, no more. Terminal services, don't call it that. No, we don't use those words anymore. Don't use terminal services anymore. Those are bad, bad words. Don't use those. So now everything's going to be RDS. RDS this, RDS that. RDS everything. We have any terminal services MVPs? I know Benny's not here. I don't know if anybody else. Steve? Yeah? They tell you at Summit about that? About the change in the name from? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So WTS, that kind of fades into the background, right? And then all of a sudden this guy called Remote FX pops up. Who the hell is that? You know? A couple years ago, I think it was, we were here. No, we were at maybe Pier. I can't remember, but Nellie from Microsoft gave a presentation, the first presentation on Remote FX. And I got to tell you, it was the coolest prezzo I've ever seen. She had a USB launcher that she used to demonstrate the Remote FX capabilities. And then she also had the Guitar Hero. And that was just the coolest presentation. But it was all to show that now they have a new protocol, right? It's not really the virtual desktop environment. You know, it's not infrastructure, VDI. It's more, this is a protocol, because that was when the protocol wars were happening. You know, what did Citrix had? Always have ICA, right? But HDX, man, that was the coolest shit to come out in a long time. Really was. VMware's got to come up with something, right? VCOIP. Paradises. Well, Microsoft's got to do something. Just wouldn't be right if they didn't. So they got to come up with Remote FX. A couple more years down the road, they say, oh, let's just bring everything back into RDS. And now it's all going to be called what? Remote FX. The entire product line is Remote FX. Remote FX this, Remote FX that, Remote FX whatever. It's all Remote FX now. Okay, so internally at Microsoft, when you talk, Remote FX. That was just I wanted to go through that to show you kind of the brief history of how Microsoft came about on all this VDI stuff. So going all through this name-changing stuff, you know, it was confusing enough, but what about the relationships that they had? I mean, what is the deal, Microsoft? First of all, you've got this relationship, this marriage, if you will, that happened back in 2001? 2000? Can't remember, maybe it was earlier than that, 99. Microsoft suddenly pumped in $40 million into Citrix. We're going to give you $40 million. Okay, we'll take it. And then every year after that, oh, here's another $40 million. Here's another $40 million. Oh, well, it's time for your payment, your annual payment. Give me $40 million. On a regular basis, they have been pumping money into Citrix. And they formed what's called an alliance. Well, my slide's screwed up. You're not supposed to see that yet. But they formed something they call an alliance, a partner alliance between the two. Nobody really understands what the hell it is because if you think about it, Citrix and Microsoft are selling the same damn thing. All right? Microsoft's got it made with RDS, terminal services, right? And they're trying to sell their VDI. Citrix has had remote application delivery. That's what Citrix is founded on. That's what their core is. That's what they're the best at. No matter what you say, Citrix has the best remote application delivery system ever. Okay? That's my belief. That's a lot of people's beliefs. But then Citrix tried to get into the VDI space, right? Zen Desktop. Then they tried to get into the Zen server, right? Into the hypervisor, type 1 hypervisor with Zen server. Uh-oh. Microsoft sees them coming. Well, we got this thing called Hyper-V we're working on. You know, we don't know exactly what to do. We got this guy that we're giving all this money to, and he's doing the same thing we are. The hell are they doing? Nobody knows. And then all of a sudden, Microsoft comes out and says, we have a what do they call it? Not a win-win. We have a winning partnership with Quest Software. What does Quest Software make? Or what I should say, what they don't make, what they buy. What do they buy? Nobody? vWorkspace, right? Right, vWorkspace. What is vWorkspace? Some kind of VDI? Would everybody agree? Anybody? Okay, just making sure everybody's awake. So they say they have a winning relationship with these people now. Brian even blogged about this back in 2010 when it happened. He said, oh, move over, Citrix. Now Quest and Microsoft are in bed together. What are you going to do now? Everybody's like, what the hell's going on? Right? Well, then bring in another player. Ooh. I could hear Bollimer, you know, just like skipping a heartbeat. Dell buys Quest, a hardware company buying a software company. Ooh, how many of you have experienced that before? And the outcome of that. So now nobody really knows what's happening here. It's all confusing. But what I do know is that they came out with a new version of VDI for 2012, and that's what I'm supposed to be talking about. I've kind of added all this extra stuff, you know, just to fill you in a little bit. All of these people that are involved here, all of these companies, they're really gunning for one target. All of them. They don't care about anybody else. They care about that guy. That guy right there is the number one enemy, sworn enemy, even though they're, oh yeah, we're partners. We're partners. No. You know, these guys know type 1. There's no disputing that, right? Anybody just really dispute that they aren't the de facto standard for type 1? Because I would beg to argue with anybody in here that they did not create, make, develop, or support the de facto type 1 hypervisor. Zen server's been out there for a while. It's awesome. It was awesome when it was open source. Okay? When it was open source. And that's as far as I'll go on that. Microsoft wrote theirs from scratch. Wow, Microsoft wrote something from scratch. Holy crap. They wrote it from scratch, right? The problem is that VMware had a huge jump on them. They still do. Okay? 2012, when they came out with Server 2012 and they showed the VDI stuff, think about the timing behind this, that they're coming out with a server operating system at the same time they're coming out with a desktop operating system. Think about the timing. Do you see any correlation since both of them have the same GUI? Both of them will have Hyper-V. Are you getting the gist here of what they're doing? Okay. So they're gunning for this guy.
Hyper-V code in Windows 8?
Yep. You betcha. It's called client-side Hyper-V. Yep. And I don't know, who had a session on that? Not Jim Moyle? Jim Moyle just had a session this morning on Windows 8. Did he mention that?
He didn't talk about that at all.
Oh, it wasn't about that at all? Okay. All right. Well, it's not really a secret because they announced it at TechEd that they are working on the client-side Hyper-V for Windows 8. So the Windows PC thing, the Windows Server, virtual PC, virtual server, Hyper-V. Now it's going to be Hyper-V. So VMware Workstation, direct competitor to VMware Workstation, you know, parallels, all that kind of good stuff. So just so you're aware that everything that these companies do, they're gunning for that guy. And they're going to try and match this guy. They're going to try and go different routes and say, well, we do this better, we do that better. But really, in the end, they're all trying to do the same things. They might choose a different way to do it, but they're still trying to get to the same end. This is what I think Ballmer is doing right now. I don't know. I don't know who makes the decisions over there, but I got to tell you, man, I'd really like to sit down and talk to them and find out what the hell they're doing. It's just confusing. It's just, for the industry as a whole, you even talk to some of the vendors. Two of the vendors I was out there talking to the other day, Monday, when they were setting up, they're like, we don't know what the hell's going on. We don't know how, you know, they give us these little blurbs about how a relationship is supposed to be. Oh, I don't know. You know, I don't know what the master plan is. Nobody does. But I figure, you know, Ballmer's sitting back and he's got his bottle of whiskey. He's probably just doesn't really care. He just wants to, you know, see how the whole thing plays out. And then there's licensing. We have what's called SA, software assurance, SPLA, the service providers, license. PUL, everybody knows what all this stuff is, right? Per user licensing, per named user licensing, per device licensing, virtual desktop licensing. And what's the latest and greatest for Windows 8? Anybody know what the next one's going to come up is? Oh, yeah. You guys have all read all the crap that's been going on, right, in the last 2 months about licensing with VDI and Microsoft? No, there's nothing out there. Especially after Brian gives up his MVP status over it. Wow. I mean, that's a big deal. When somebody gives up an MVP status over something like that, that's a big deal. I'm sorry? What is CDL? CDL, Companion Device License. That's the new licensing for Windows 8 that they're introducing. So what it is it has to do with iPad devices, okay, iPhones, any kind of portable devices that run and don't run the Windows operating system on them. If you run the Windows operating system on, I mean, Nathan from Cathino gave a licensing thing. It's confusing as hell. It's just totally confusing. You know, if it's a corporate-owned device, you have to own a VDI, you have to own a CDL license. If it's a non-corporate-owned device, okay, but it accesses corporate data, you have to own a VDA license and a CDL license.
For your iPhone?
Yeah.
A VDA license.
Yeah. But yeah. And that's changed twice now. They've changed licensing twice. Saying, oh, everybody bitched about it at first, oh, we'll make it easier for people and we'll change it. You know, then they come back, oh, we'll change it again because everybody's complaining about this. But it's just totally confusing what you have to have and what, you know, in order to run any kind of Microsoft application or access a Microsoft Windows network. And again, I'm talking mainly about VDI. It also covers RDS, remote desktop services too. Brian has this picture in like I think it's like every slide deck he does. But, you know, it's confusing as hell is what I'm trying to point out here. And he does the same thing. He just says, you know, this is really confusing. And it really, you know, some people just, I've actually got to go through another true up and a new EA agreement here in the next month. Well, actually, it's due September 1st. I mean, they're coming back and they're just off the wall. They don't even know what pricing to give us. You know, our LAR is sitting there going, you know, I don't know. They don't know, you know. And eventually we'll end up getting it wrong, and then something will happen, and Microsoft will have to do amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment like we do all the time, and so on and so forth. I can't say the name, but this was actually said by one of Microsoft's biggest opponents. You know, possibly one that was in a previous slide that had crosshairs on it. To come out and say that when they brought out this VDI license, because they're affected by it. Think about it. They have customers too that have to license this stuff, right? Even though they're not using their hypervisor or using the competitor's hypervisor, they still have to license it. So when the CEO of a company comes out and says it's totally insane and, you know, unnecessary, it is, if you think about it. Anybody involved in EAs right now and virtual desktop licensing, going through all that crap? Are you?
I did it the past 6 months, but not the new CDL license.
Good luck. Yeah. When I was looking through these slides, you come up and, you know, you guys sit in a lot of sessions here at BriForum, and after the years, you sit there and you look at some of the stuff like Jack does, and Brian does, and Gabe does, okay? And even, you know, not so much Sean, because he's really more straightforward, but some of the other guys, they try and find some really wacky crap to put in their slides, you know, just trying to see if you can figure it out. So I found this one, and I was looking for confusion, right? Basically Googled confusion and said, what image could I portray for that? And I found this one. That's a sign. That's a real sign. What the hell does that mean? I mean, they had conversations about this. I found this on a blog, right? And they had conversations on it about how they thought it was eggs. Why would you cut eggs? You know, think about it, right? If you lean over this fence or line or something, they're going to cut your eggs. We're getting closer. You're getting warmer. So eventually, a person who lives in an area where this sign exists, which is in another country that, you know, is way out there, they said it has to do with not going in somewhere, and if they did, they actually have the right to cut something off of you. And I don't know if I believe this or not. Maybe it is. I mean, in some countries, I guess they can do that, you know, but that's the explanation that he gave on the blog. I mean, you guys, really. Okay. So let's talk about Hyper-V, and I got to talk about Hyper-V because Hyper-V is VDI, right? That's what it is. And I know you guys have probably, if you've already attended Jim's session, Tim's session, who else was doing sessions? Jason didn't do VDI this time around. I don't remember who else did VDI, or did, what's that? Yep, okay, sorry. That's why Jerion's here. He's, you know, keeps up on this stuff. But they talk about a lot of this stuff. So if this is, you know, I'm reiterating some stuff that's already been spewed out to you. If that's the case, I apologize. I'll see you start checking your phone and doing your email and doing all that other kind of stuff. So we'll slide through these, and then I'll head over to the demo. Storage live migration, finally. Yeah! Believe it or not, Microsoft has finally put that in there. Guess what's coming in the next version of Zen Server? Yeah! Finally! It's 6.5, 6.1, what is it, Joe? Joe, next version of Zen Server 6.5? 2012. Okay. 2012? All right. Storage vMotion? I'm using the terminology from VMware. Storage vMotion. It takes the ability, has the ability to take a machine, a virtual guest, and move it from one piece of storage to another. Okay, so if you're like moving from one set of LUNs from one tier to a higher tier, say from fiber channel, or you're going down to SATA or SAS, or you can move from a decommissioned SAN to a new SAN, that is the ability to move those machines with no outage, live. VHDX, that's a new version of the disk format. It adds a bunch of capability, okay? It's the same as VHD, but it adds a whole bunch of new header information and all that kind of stuff. We'll see a little bit more on that. Networking, fiber channels in guests, that's almost like unheard of. I don't know, unless you're doing some real testing, man. I don't know why you want fiber channel, but what the hell? Why not? SRIOV, direct access to the physical network adapter, PVLANs, router guard, trunking, data center bridging, and lots more. Same thing that the competitor has already. Supports AD servers. Really? Who the hell hasn't been virtualizing AD servers yet? You've done server virtualization. Really? Oh, yeah? Yeah? Well, the company that makes Active Directory wouldn't even support virtualizing them in their own hypervisor. Now they do. VMware supported it for years, but now they do. Automated node draining, which is really cool. It's a cool feature. I don't think there's a feature like that in VMware, you know, where it automatically would go through and drain a node, you drain connections off of a node, you know, off of in a cluster formation, you know, machines that are clustered together. That's pretty cool. I'm sorry?
What is it?
Automated node draining. That's when they actually have a cluster of machines inside of that are virtualized, and you have the ability to drain connections off of a node. Okay, so you can drain it and you can take that machine offline. All right, that's what makes some of the cluster aware everything. So they're more cluster aware now on all that stuff.
What's drain? I mean, you just turn it off.
Just pulling connections off, allowing for connections to actually be relieved off of the machine.
What connections?
If they're connections to applications, user connections to a machine, those types of connections.
Like terminal server?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
One by one?
Yep. VHDX I already talked about. I don't know why I have that in there twice. Replicas supporting clustering. They didn't have. They had replicas before, but now they support clustering in replicas. Live merge of snapshots and VHDs. They never had live merge before, so now while the machine's running, you can do merges. Couldn't do that before. You would actually have to shut the machine down to do those merges.
What's a merge?
A merge is the ability when you take a snapshot of a machine. So you have a machine that's running a guest that's running let's say an application. You take a snapshot of that machine. That's a point in time, okay, disk image of that, and that image collects deltas of the changes that happen. All right. What you can do is you can say that, well, I no longer need that point in time snapshot. All right. I want to merge the original state of that disk with the new deltas and put them together, so I can save disk space, okay, and I don't have two points that data is being actually, you know, relied upon for that guest. Yep, they're brought together. VMware, again, has had that for years, where you could do that on the fly. SCVMM is no longer required for provisioning. Does anybody do the old VDI in 2000? Has anybody tried that? VDI in 2008 or 2008? It's a freaking nightmare. I don't know. You have? Yeah. Well, kind of. Okay, because remote desktop, you can do that. That really has two different meanings. Either you have a separate physical machine, or you're remote desktoping a terminal server. Okay, a session, if you will. Okay, so there's really two different meanings there. It used to be that you couldn't provision multiple machines without having SVVMM, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, available to do it for you. Okay, now it's built in. Pooled desktops no longer hold a bad state. That was a big problem with the original one with MedV. A pooled desktop would hold that state that a user corrupted and give it to other users. But now it no longer does that. Client Hyper-V, which I just talked about before, which was Windows 8, and on and on. This is the official Microsoft Roadshow deck. Have you guys attended the Roadshow for Server 2012? Jason Conger, Sean Bass, all those guys, MVPs, they give this thing all over the country. I am going to fly through these things, trust me. This is what they show everybody in their standard blah, 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 blah. This is what 2008 R2, what VDI used to be, so on and so forth. Okay? This is what we are now. And what they're really pushing for is that multi-tenancy, the ability to have multi-tenants in your data center. I don't know how many of you are hosting multiple tenants in your data center, but unless you're a service provider, I don't know why you'd want to. Flexible, scalable, high available, blah, blah, blah. The isolation, Hyper-V extensible switch. It's kind of like the, how many people in here right now know VMware really well? Wow. I thought there'd be more. What that means is like the Cisco 1000V, okay? You can put a switch in there that gives you more capability than just a regular virtual switch, okay? And this goes through the isolation and multi-tenant, all that kind of stuff, new feature, extensible. They have PVLANs, private VLANs. If you have a reason for doing that, if your enterprise is so complex, you need to do something like that. Migrate virtual machines without downtime, I'll get into that. Automated support for Hyper-V, that's just the removal, the built-in provisioning, and the PowerShell capabilities. Virtual machine storage, merge snapshots. Import virtual machines, they changed that importer a little bit, so it more reliably imports. I'm not going to go through a lot of this. I hope nobody's upset about it, but you can get this deck off of Microsoft's site if you really want it. I don't want it. I mean, this really doesn't have a lot. This is more about Hyper-V in general, not really VDI. Well, it is VDI, but whatever. It is, but it isn't. Migrate without downtime. What's really cool is that they have shared nothing live migration. So you can have nothing that's shared between two Hyper-V hosts, and you can migrate between the two. Cool, huh? Can't do that with VMware. Really? Pardon?
Migration between two clusters?
Yep, the don't share an infrastructure.
And that's not based on the replica technology?
This is not based on this right here. No, it's moving from one SAN to another SAN, right? Yeah. That shows you how you can move them with no downtime.
The VMs without going down?
I'm sorry?
You can live migrate between these two?
There's no downtime.
Between these two clusters?
Right. Yep. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Got a good built-in P2V tool.
A P2V tool? They don't have one. Well, their P2V tool is the import physical machine.
DistVHD is the
Yeah.
best one I found, and
Yeah.
Microsoft didn't do it.
Right. There's some third parties out there that do it though. I found one that does really good VHD and VMDK. If you guys go between VMware and on Hyper-V, it's made by Starwind Software. It's called Starwind Converter. It's really fast and it's really good. It's free. It's a free converter. Starwind. Yeah. The performance, the changes that they've made, the quality of service is something new, resource metering, all that kind of stuff, the new format we talked about. Data center bridging, I don't know a lot about that one yet. The virtual fiber channel we already mentioned. These are the new limits that they've added in 2012. You can see they've jumped up quite a bit. Right now they're on pretty much a level plane with VMware. And then high availability with replicas. NIC teaming, that's new. You can actually team inside a guest, so HP teaming comes, you can actually, on a physical server, you can do the same thing in a virtual now. I'm not going to cover a lot of the clustering stuff. One thing I found interesting, though, is that it uses BitLocker drive encryption in the data center. That's, I don't know when is BitLocker going to come in the data center, but I guess, okay. The transport and failover, move the file shares between nodes with little interruption. Notice how they say little interruption? That's usually like a ping or two, just like other vendors have. And all of the clustering enhancements, inbox, live. I could spend a whole session on all this stuff, and I don't want to take all the time for this. And that's their final slide, so thank God the Microsoft deck is over. Okay, this is VDI. With VDI in 2012, you have 3 scenarios you can do. You can do desktop sessions, pooled VMs, or personal VMs. Desktop sessions, what is that? RDS, right? You bet. Okay, pooled VMs. Put one out there, somebody comes in, uses it, they're done with it, goes back in a pool, somebody else comes in, can use it, goes back in a pool, so on and so forth. And then personal VMs. Those are dedicated, one-to-ones. Okay? I'm sorry? Desktop session is where you actually are presented with a terminal server desktop. It's not a virtual desktop. It's not a desktop. It's a terminal server desktop. That's been around forever. You could do that back in the Windows 2000 days. Then they go through and they show, you can do all this stuff, and it moves down into the branch office, the corporate office, the home, coffee house, all that kind of good stuff. Deployments, desktop sessions, like I said, pooled desktops, personal desktops. They have something called user profile disks, which are new. It allows you to put the user profile state in a disk, and that disk is then portable. You can attach it wherever you like. Okay, it's just a VHD. It includes things like their favorites, their My Documents, all that kind of stuff. You can pick and choose what you want inside of a user profile disk. It is somewhat limited to start out with, okay, but it's evolving. It's something that's brand new, and it's pretty cool. I'm sorry? What happened to what?
Remote apps?
Remote application delivery? That's still there. Okay. Yep, but that's not actually a VDI. Yeah, okay. Right. Okay. So you have to separate between VDI and remote application delivery. Yeah. And then we have collections. You have to understand Microsoft terminology on this. Collection. Everything is collection now. You have a collection of virtual, disks. You have a collection of virtual desktops. You have a collection of RDS servers. You have a collection of this, that, and the other thing. It's all collections now. Anybody know what a charm is? Wait a minute now. Wait a minute, smarty pants. Hang on. Okay, so we have a couple people that know. Can you guess? Somebody who didn't raise their hand. Do you know what a charm is in 2012? Have you've seen the 2012 interface, right? Yeah, a little bit. So when that desktop comes up, you know what those tiles are, right? What are those called? Tiles. Okay, they're called tiles, right? But when you bring over the mouse over to the right-hand side, all of a sudden you see these things pop out. And those are called charms. Yeah, I don't know where the hell they came up with that, but they're charms. I'll show them to you. What's that?
Show the earlier slide of Palmer that they'll explain the charms.
Oh, yeah?
Correlation.
She raised an interesting question. I'm only going to hit on this briefly. But how many in here are actually doing VDI right now? A couple of you are doing VDI? Okay, how many are actually doing remote application delivery? Rad. Okay, are you using Citrix? Okay, pretty much everybody? Anybody using terminal services? You are? Oh, of course, Rick, you are. The thing about it is that the first question you have to ask yourself when you're doing this is, do I really need to provide VDI, right? That's the real question. And I'm going to get to something here in a second. Remember what I said? I got changes for 2012, but Microsoft said, no, you can't use the term VDI. VDI was like blacklisted at Microsoft. You couldn't use that term at Microsoft. Now they say, oh, we can use that now. We're cool. It's no longer painful. It is less painful. I had no longer painful, but then I'm like, it's kind of still is in a way. Everything is PowerShell. Get used to it. You work with a Microsoft product, pretty much everything now is going to be PowerShell. RDS is no different. Everything. Matter of fact, you'll notice that the server, the wizards, the server manager, which is one of the front ends that you see, I'll show you, that you may have already seen in a demonstration. What's running on the back end of that? PowerShell. Wizards, and more wizards. Everything's a wizard in 2012. For some reason, I don't know how many people grew up with command line. How many people use DOS? How many people know what the hell DOS is? How many people use Unix? No shit. Anybody use AIX? Ah, you're a friend of mine, buddy. That's what I started out in. Yeah. But they've gone from this whole thing of command line, right? Early days, punch cards, Novell, DEC, okay, all that kind of good stuff. Then they start going the GUI route, and we start getting into these wizards. But now Microsoft's coming back and saying, wait a minute, we're going back to PowerShell. That's command line. What? So now they've got a command line, but now they're making all these wizards that go in front of the command line because everybody's bitching saying, I don't want to do the command line. Okay, whatever. A tip on that, remember to turn on desktop experience. If you're going to use wizards, turn on desktop experience. They don't do it by default. I have no idea why, because it's a resource hog maybe, I don't know. But to get the full wizard effect, you got to turn on desktop experience. Desktop experience, what it does is it adds all the ability to do like previews in your taskbar. It gives you more color, bigger color palette. The ability to, all the arrow features and all that kind of stuff. It makes the wizard, some of the text you can't read very well unless you turn on desktop experience. And again, this is not but this is not for server core. If you're running server core, obviously you're not going to see any of this. Auto VM creation I already talked about that. Maintenance update, queuing, patching. You can do patching now on the machines, okay? Master images for both personal and pooled. Couldn't do that before. No remote control. How many saw Claudio's session on Monday? What's the biggest thing he bitched about? No remote control. None. Gone. History. No shadowing, no nothing. I don't know what they're thinking. But maybe they want us to have a third party buy it. I don't know. But you cannot shadow a session any longer, which really kind of sucks for help desk. Because I have a lot of people that do help desk, and they love the fact that they can shadow and that they can remote control people. But you can't do that. Maybe they're leaning towards this whole Windows Intune, Easy Assist thing that they're going for. But what have you got until then? What did Claudio say you have until then? Who was in there? Remote assistance. Bleh. Remote assistance. Yeah. And there are built-in VDI alternatives. RDS, the remote desktop services host. They're not new. They've been around for a long time. They were renamed. They're really cool. Same thing here. This I'm going to skip through because this is a lot of the stuff about BDI. Lower cost, fair share. Does everybody know about fair share? The ability to dynamically share resources in Hyper-V now between guests. Okay, fair share allows that. High performance across all. If anybody's doing VMware, DRS, same thing. Distributed resource scheduling, the same thing. Pretty much the same thing. Pretty much. Yes, sir.
If I'm running VMware and I have a Citrix XenApp farm, do I not get to use some of the capabilities of fair share even though I'm
That's
not.
correct.
I'm not.
Because you're not running on Hyper-V.
Right.
Right.
Oh, I need to use it on Hyper-V to use it?
Well, as of 2008 R2, I don't know about I never heard anything about 2012 requirements. If it's still the same as R2, it still requires Hyper-V. To answer your question, I can't answer your question.
I see.
Okay, I need somebody who's, has inside information, because you guys got to understand too, they haven't released 2012, duh. So any information that I'm giving you isn't necessarily what's actually going to come out, because this is the information that was given to us, and they change things on the fly. But yes, I understand that. My understanding is Hyper-V is still a requirement for that.
I see.
Direct attack storage, optimization, reduce storage costs, maximizing IOPS, that's marketing really. Active broker, that's the clustering, scale out file server. 32 nodes and 4,000 VMs per cluster with Hyper-V. Okay, sure. And then increase the density further by using remote desktop hosts, shared session hosts. What's needed? Quick deploy. There's two ways to deploy. There's quick deploy and there's standard deployment. Okay? Quick deploy, you need one beefy 2012 server or a virtual machine, whatever. Active Directory is actually an RDS requirement, which is installed with when you pick the VDI. Okay? It's not a requirement of VDI, but it's a requirement of RDS. Disk space, obviously, licenses, and gateway. The licenses thing has changed. I haven't gotten a lot of information on that, but I understand that they're changing that this year. Not licenses you buy, but how you deploy them for terminal services.
You cannot deploy RDS without VD?
Correct.
On a work
Can't do it on a work group.
No?
Nope.
I asked
Standard deploy. I'm sorry?
Never mind. Quick deploy you cannot do. Standard you can do it without it, right?
Right, standard you can do without it. I have AD here because you should have it, but quick deploy you can't. Okay, licenses, disk space. You need a connection broker host, you need a session host, you need a web access host, a virtualization host, and if you want security, an RDS gateway host. Depends on how you want to do that. I put this in here because what's really needed first, I'm getting back to them, I kind of segued into it before, but you really have to think about what you want. If you only want to deliver apps, is there any reason you got to deliver VDI? Everybody should answer this like a kumbaya moment. No. Right? My users want their own wallpaper. My users want to be able to do this. We make users administrators so they can do whatever the hell they want on their machines. Okay, well then you got some internal problems you got to work out. No, really, I mean, I understand that that happens, but at the same time, you're really not, it's not necessary. You're really designing something and people have talked about this, Brian's talked about it, Gabe's talked about it, everybody's talked about it. You're really setting yourself up for failure, okay? You don't want to do that. You're really setting yourself up for a bad plan, you know? If that's real, you know, I don't know if it's real or not. That's a picture I got off of Google, so I don't know, but you're really setting yourself up. If you only have to deliver applications and remote application delivery works for you, you don't need VDI. Don't listen to a vendor who says you have to have VDI. You don't. Some will try and sell it to you, and they just want to sell it to you. Okay. Real quick. Alyssa, how much time do I have? About 25 minutes. Okay. If anybody in here listen, or one second. Anybody in here ever read a Tech Target website called Search Enterprise Desktop? That's a site editor right over there. That's Alyssa. I'm sorry, Search Virtual Desktop. I'm sorry. She's a star. Okay. So what I have here is I have two 2012 servers, Demo 1 and Demo 2. Of course, with this resolution, Demo 2 is off the screen, but I'll make the best of what I can make here. Before I go on, does anybody, and don't Google it, does anybody know what this word means? Don't Google it. Mimesis. How many of you ever said the word like abso-freaking-lutely? It's when you take a word and separate it with another word in the middle. That's what that is. Just a little bit of trivia for you. So this is 2012. I'm sure you've all seen it. And since my desktop is here not cooperating, in 2012, all of you people who are server administrators, you got to get used to a whole bunch of new gestures. In order to, this is what you're presented with. These are tiles, but you're sitting there going, where's my command prompt? Where's my control panel? Oh, you have control panel on here. But where's all my other stuff that I could just go into? I'm trying to get my mouse in that upper right-hand corner. Can you do it in the lower right-hand corner too, I think? Isn't there a control I or something too that brings it up? Windows, what's the command key? Windows what to bring up the charms? What's that? Windows I, is it? No, not unless it doesn't pass to the virtual machine. Oh, crap. Well, I wanted to show you the charms, but I can't. I'm sorry? Somebody's talking.
Full screen, maximize the window.
Yeah, I couldn't, but I was trying to, I don't know if it's going to work, though. Oh, there's the man. You're the man. Now they're gone. Shit. Those are charms. Ooh, lucky charms. Just so everybody knows. Those are called charms. And what you can do here is on the start screen, you can actually right-click on the desktop and you can select this new thing that comes up in the bottom with all apps. And it'll actually show you, all the stuff that you're missing there. And then you can go right back to the desktop. This is the server manager. You've probably seen this a dozen times this last couple days. But what I've got here is I installed remote desktop services already. That is running. I'm going to step through on my other machine and actually do the install real quick so you can actually see it when it starts up and what options you have to take. So in 2012, Server Manager is king. Server Manager runs everything. Okay, and you can do what's called server groups. You can manage them all within a single Server Manager. And when you want to do the add a role or a feature like we're used to in 2008, basically it's the first one of the things you can do is click here and it starts the wizard collecting inventory data. It starts the wizard to be able to add that stuff. So once this thing is done collecting inventory data here, I can actually go through and add it. There we go. So if you say add a role, the coolest thing is it asks you right away is, do you want to add a role-based or do you want to actually add remote desktop services? How cool is that? I mean, it's right out, it's the first click. RDS comes up. I will tell you this, is that there are plans to expand this list, to add more things that you can just click on, and it'll execute the wizard for those. So if I do RDS, I go next. It asks me about the standard or the quick start. I called it a quick deploy, but it's called a quick start. A standard is where it's going to go out and it's going to want you to have a server group where you have all the servers, your connection host, your web host, all that kind of stuff, all in a server group, and it'll deploy the different pieces to them. Quick Start's going to do everything on one machine. And that's mainly for small infrastructures and demos like we're doing. This is where you pick between VDI and a session-based desktop deployment. Really, if you install virtual machine-based desktop deployment, you get session-based desktop deployment with it. Okay, it installs it. It doesn't. It has to install it in the background, right? So it's there. But if you install session-based, it doesn't automatically install the pieces for VDI. Okay, but so session-based. When you do this, it's going to install Hyper-V, it's going to install IAS, and it's going to install the RDS services. So you do the VDI. It goes through and runs a check. Now this is where you'd have your server pool. You could tell it, all these servers that I have listed here, I want all of them to have this capability. So you could have a pool of 6, 12, 20, 40, whatever servers, and you can just shoot this out to all of them in one deployment. Then it goes through some more checks. And this is, hopefully I won't error out on me here. It's going to want to know the hard disk location. You have to create what's called a template. This is not any different than 2008 R2. You have to create a template machine in order for VDI to be able to launch or create desktops off of that template, master image, if you will. It comes up and asks for that master image. I think it kind of sucks that you have to specify that when you do this install. You can't change. I mean, you can change it later, but you can't get past this. It has to be there. And I don't have a master image here. Anyways, what we would do is we would go through and we'd say yes to this. It would come back and it would do all of its checks to make sure it could host everything on one box or on those boxes, and then it would deploy. And at the end of the deployment, it would look like this. And it gives you a nice diagram of where your servers are. Okay, they're gray right now because they're sitting idle, but they are there. I can go down here, and of course I only have one server, but I have multiple collections. I have a quick session collection and a Win8 pool. That means I can run both remote desktop, remote session, and virtual desktops, all on the same machine, all from these collections. Okay, when you specify a collection, that's what you can run from it. The Win8 pool is automatic. You look in here, you can automatically manage the virtual desktops. I've got that disabled. What that'll do is when you want to go out and deploy virtual desktops, it'll come up and ask you how many. And then it'll ask you for a naming convention. And you can go out and you can shoot out a dozen desktops at one time. So it'll go out and it'll create, off that image, it'll create a dozen desktops. Similar to the other two competing products, VDI, they do the same thing. Okay, they have the ability to create these machines on the fly just by you giving them a number and a naming convention, and they'll create them. Okay? That's part of the automation piece that they didn't have before. This is where you assign the users, the collection type. This could be pooled or personal. This is where you actually go in and you can tell it, you know, show in web access, all that kind of stuff. What groups have permissions to it, all the client settings. This is all the terminal server client settings, if you remember, about audio and all that other kind of stuff. And then user profile disk. You can enable the user profile disk, which allows for that. And you can see right here, it's telling you enable folder redirection, and it actually will tell you, you can sit here and put what folders, favorites, my documents, so on and so forth. I can tell you right now that it is not a complete user profile management tool by any stretch of the imagination. If you are running AppSense or you're running, you know, a similar product as that, that is much more elaborate than you will get with this. What else was I going to hit on here? In the actual virtual machine, this is where if you just want to say, I just want to add a virtual desktop, it'll come up and it'll say, available virtual desktops. It'll show me that I have one listed here. It should show me. And then I can do an add, and then it'll say, you want to add all this desktop to this pool. You're just adding virtual desktops to that pool, that collection, if you will. Okay? So then if you have 5 users and you have 3 desktops, that's going to be a pooled scenario where those 3 desktops can be in use. 2 people aren't going to be able to have a desktop. You just keep on adding desktops. On the quick session, this is the RDS portion of it. I think this is cool because, you know, the way they changed this, it's really easy to publish apps and stuff now. For a lot of anybody who uses an app, you know, it's really easy to do that if you've been using that for years, but now they've gotten to a point with RDS where it's really easy to do. So I like to publish both, and the reason for that is because some users don't need desktops, some just need, you know, applications. So they go through one web interface, which I will show you now. Oh yeah, hey, I found this. Real quick. Okay, thanks. Real quick, have you ever seen this? Some guy at Pittsburgh, a faculty member at Pittsburgh made this. And this is a close-up, supposed to be a close-up of a parody of a Microsoft license agreement. And this is actually, if you read it down here, it's like, you sing praises to Microsoft every morning upon waking and every evening before retiring. All hail Microsoft. You know? I thought it was pretty funny. I was trying to look up the frustration with EA licensing. I was going to give it to Nathan. But let's see if we can go here. And tell me this is not going to connect. Come on now. Oh, I love it. See if I can bring it up from here. You would put in this. Hang on here. Oh, there it is. So if you've ever used the remote desktop web feature before, this will look really familiar to you. A user signs in. And basically, anybody who's familiar with Zen Desktop allows you to put things in tabs on the web axis and things like that, desktops, applications, so on and so forth. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, I don't know why, they throw everything on the first page. So you have all your apps and your desktop that you can access right off of this one web page.
Still only work with IE and ActiveX controls?
One more time.
Does it still only work with IE and ActiveX?
HTML5.
Really?
Yeah, that's what. Well, I shouldn't say that right now. It is, but it will be HTML5. The problem is that you know what the problem is? It's the RDP, session that causes the issue. It's nothing else in the coding. It's the RDP issue. So when you click over and say connect to a PC, when you go over there, that actually is an RDP session. It starts up an RDP web client session, and that requires ActiveX. So then they say, information gathered at this BriForum session, that eventually it will be HTML5.
If you just deliver an RDP file straight to the desktop, it doesn't pop up any ActiveX issues. So why do they do it there? That's just
They're smarter than me. I don't know. So that is pretty much VDI. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, I got, wait. Let me see if I can get back to my slide deck here before I stop. Where's my, there it is. I have to give it a charm rating. How many charms do you give the new Microsoft VDI? Well, la-di-da. Negative. No, actually, in dealing with it the way it was, and dealing with it in the way it is a drastic improvement. Miles ahead. A couple years ago, everybody said that Microsoft was 5 years behind VMware. Not only in the Hyper-V space, but also in the virtual desktop space. Guess what? That gap's closing really quick. I seriously, personally, with the other features that are involved with clustering and replicas and all that kind of good stuff, I've got to give it 4 out of 5. I've got to. And once I get it in production and it really messes up somebody, then I'll give it 2. But I've got to get it 4 out of 5 for now. Big thumbs up. That's Claudio. Claudio's idea. He had approved on his, and I get a big thumbs up. These are some good resources on Hyper-V. I highly recommend number 1. That gives you a running glossary of every change that they're making right now to Hyper-V. And he's been keeping that up to date as new features are added and removed, which seems to be happening on like a daily basis. And then this one, this one right here, it'll actually tell you how to build a lab. You can build your own lab right from that document. It's really quick and easy.
What is the release date for 2012?
I'm sorry?
Release date for 2012?
Oh, well, August, end of August, middle of August is Windows 8. 2012, I would assume it's going to be shortly around the same time, yeah.
RTM,
Is it?
RTM is in August, but then 26th of August.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, see, these people know more than I do, but
RTM in next month.
yeah, next month will be RTM. Yeah. I thought they were going to release it at TechEd, but I was a little early because they wanted more testing done on it, but either way, you're going to have it before Christmas because they want everybody to buy PCs with Windows 8 on it, for Christmas. Yeah. Thank you very much.